The gas station lights flickered under the heavy gray sky, casting long shadows across the cracked concrete. Rain misted the air, a quiet drizzle softening the world around him. Thomas pulled off the highway, not because he needed fuel, but because he needed a break, from driving, from thinking, from everything. He'd been on the road for nearly 5 hours, trying to outrun a silence that had grown far too loud. As he stepped out of the car, his boots met the wet gravel with a soft crunch. He didn't expect anything unusual. Just a bottle of water, maybe some aspirin, and a few minutes of empty quiet before continuing on. But life has a strange way of throwing the unexpected in your path when you're least prepared. He didn't see her at first. It wasn't until he stepped past the gas pump, toward the store entrance, that he froze. There, standing near the vending machine, her hand resting gently on her swollen belly, was her Emily. His wife. Well, ex-wife, almost. The divorce papers hadn't been signed, but he hadn't seen her in nearly 8 months. Not since he walked out. Not since he said those words, cruel, cold, final. You deserve someone who can give you a family. I can't keep doing this. But now, in front of him, she was visibly pregnant. His breath caught. His heartbeat thudded in his ears. For a brief moment, the world narrowed to just her. The rest of the gas station, the cars, the distant hum of the freeway, the clatter of someone dropping a soda can, all faded into silence. He wanted to speak, to say her name, but nothing came out. She hadn't seen him yet. She was distracted, fumbling with the vending machine, her long brown hair falling in strands around her face. The same woman he had once held through tears. The same woman who had laid awake night after night, dreaming of a child they were told they could never have. And now, this? How? His mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe she had moved on. Maybe she had adopted. Maybe it wasn't real, some odd illusion created by exhaustion and guilt. But it was real. He knew it the second she looked up and their eyes met. Emily froze. For a moment, neither of them moved. Time paused. Her eyes widened, not in surprise, but something else. Something harder to define. A flicker of emotion crossed her face, fear, maybe, or something deeper. She turned away. Not a word. Not a wave. Just turned, fast, and walked into the store. Thomas stood motionless, the rain lightly speckling his jacket. Part of him wanted to chase after her, demand answers. The other part, cowardly, uncertain, considered getting back in the car and pretending he'd seen nothing at all. But he couldn't walk away. Not now. Not after this. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled of coffee, oil, and stale candy. He scanned the small store until he saw her standing near the refrigerated drinks, pretending to look at bottled water. Emily, he said, finally finding his voice. She didn't turn around. Emily, he said again, softer this time. She exhaled sharply, then turned. Her eyes met his, steady and guarded. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shouting. That made it worse. You shouldn't be here, she said, her voice low. I didn't plan this, he replied. I was just driving, saw the station, stopped for a break. I didn't expect to. I mean, you're pregnant, she finished for him. Yeah. How? He asked, immediately regretting how it sounded, like a demand, like an accusation. Her jaw tightened. That's none of your business anymore. I know, he said, quietly. But I'm standing here, and I'm looking at you, and I need to understand. You told me, the doctor said. I know what they said, Thomas. Her voice wavered, but she didn't look away. They were wrong. Wrong? He echoed, barely above a whisper. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe it wasn't just about science. Maybe it was timing. Or maybe, she paused, looking down at her belly. Maybe it's something you'll never understand. He didn't know what to say. The last time they had spoken, their lives were falling apart. He had blamed the infertility for their brokenness. But now, standing here, the sight of her pregnant ripped open wounds he hadn't realized still bled. "Is it mine?" he asked, suddenly. The words shocked even him. She looked up, slowly. Her eyes narrowed, not with anger, but something like pity. "Do you think I would lie about that?" "I don't know what to think," he said. "I just know I left because we were told it was impossible. And now, this." "Maybe the impossible just needed time," she said. The silence between them stretched long. Finally, she said, "You left when things got hard. You walked away when I needed you most. And now that you see me with something you think you lost, you want answers. But some answers cost more than you're willing to pay, Thomas." He looked at her belly again, then back at her. "You could have told me. I didn't know for sure until months after you left. And by then, I was already learning how to live without you. But I still," he trailed off. What was he trying to say? That he still cared? That he regretted it? That he wanted to be part of this now? Her voice cut through his silence. "This isn't your story anymore. You gave it away." The words hit like a slap. But then, just as she turned to walk away again, she stopped. "You want the truth," she said, not turning around. "I didn't just get pregnant. I didn't just wake up and find a miracle. Something happened, Thomas. Something strange. Something I can't explain. That got his attention." "What do you mean?" She turned back toward him, her face pale, eyes shadowed with something more than exhaustion. "There were things I didn't tell you. About what happened after you left. About the place I went, and the people I met." "What kind of people?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced toward the cashier, then back at him. "If you really want to know," she said. "Meet me tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. At the old cliffside house, where we used to go in the summer." He hesitated. "Why there?" "Because that's where it started. And if I tell you everything here, you won't believe me." Then she left. Just like that. Thomas stood frozen, his thoughts tangled in 100 directions. What did she mean? Something happened. What kind of something? And why did her voice tremble, not with anger, but with fear? He got back into his car and sat in silence, the rain tapping gently on the windshield. A dozen questions spiraled in his head. If she wasn't lying, if she was telling the truth, then whatever had happened to her wasn't just medical. It was something else. And tomorrow, he would find out. But nothing, could prepare him for what she was about to reveal. The cliffside wind howled like a warning. Thomas pulled his jacket tighter as he stepped out of the car, gravel crunching beneath his boots. The old summer house stood in the distance, perched on the edge of the rocky bluff, its paint weathered, its windows dark, like hollow eyes watching him approach. He hadn't been here in years, not since those quieter times with Emily, when their lives were simpler, full of dreams they still believed could come true. Now, everything felt heavier. Stranger. And she was already waiting. Emily stood on the porch, wrapped in a gray shawl, her silhouette outlined by the rising sun. She looked the same and completely different. Stronger, somehow, but also distant, like someone who'd seen something you couldn't unsee. "Right on time," she said, her voice barely audible over the wind. "You said something started here," Thomas replied, taking a cautious step closer. "What did you mean?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she opened the door and gestured for him to follow. Inside, the house smelled of dust, sea salt, and thyme. The furniture was covered with white sheets. A thin beam of light cut through the closed curtains. Everything felt frozen, like the house had been waiting for this moment just as much as they had. Emily sat down at the old kitchen table, resting a hand on her belly. "You're going to want to sit down for this." He did. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. "The day after you left," she began slowly, "I came here. I didn't know where else to go. My world had just collapsed. I couldn't be in that apartment anymore, surrounded by pictures of us and books we never finished and empty nursery catalogs." Thomas looked down, guilt washing over him. "I spent 2 nights here," she continued. "Didn't sleep much. Just cried. Wandered. Sat on the rocks. I thought maybe I could start healing. Or at least survive." She paused, eyes clouding. But then, something strange happened. Thomas leaned in. "What do you mean?" "The second night," she said, "I was outside. It was late, maybe 1 or 2 in the morning. I was sitting near the edge of the cliff, watching the ocean. And I saw lights." "Lights?" he echoed. "They weren't boats. They weren't stars. They were too close. Too silent. They hovered in the air, just over the water. 4 of them, bright, circular. I watched them for what felt like hours. Then I blacked out." Thomas blinked. "You blacked out?" She nodded. "I woke up the next morning, lying on the cold rocks. I thought maybe I'd fainted. Maybe it was stress, lack of sleep. But something felt different. My body. My mind." Thomas's breath caught. You think whatever happened that night is connected to the pregnancy?" "I don't know what to think," Emily whispered. "All I know is, 3 weeks later, I took a test, just to rule it out. It came back positive." He sat in stunned silence. "The doctors couldn't explain it," she said. "They ran every test. No IVF. No donor. No signs of anything artificial. They just said, it was a medical miracle. But I know something happened that night." Thomas swallowed hard. "Emily, are you saying you were, what? Abducted?" "No," she said quickly. "Nothing like that. At least, not that I remember. But ever since that night, I've felt different. And the baby," her voice softened, "the baby isn't like other babies." He stiffened. "What do you mean?" Emily hesitated. "A month ago, I was at a routine scan. The technician, she saw something on the monitor. Something she couldn't explain. Not an anomaly. Not a deformity. Just a shape. Like a symbol." Thomas stared at her. "What kind of symbol?" "I don't know. It looked ancient. Geometric. And then, just like that, it was gone. Disappeared on the screen. The technician brushed it off, but I saw it. I felt it." Silence hung heavy between them. Thomas rubbed his hands together, trying to process what he was hearing. "You're asking me to believe that something supernatural is happening?" "I'm not asking you to believe anything," she said quietly. "I'm just telling you what I've seen. What I've felt. You asked to know the truth. This is it." Thomas stood, walking to the window. The ocean crashed below, wild and endless. He remembered the woman he left behind, the Emily who clung to hope like a lifeline, who counted ovulation days and marked calendars with shaky hands. This version of her was different. Grounded. Mysterious. Unshaken by his doubt. "Why tell me now?" he asked finally. "Why let me in again?" Emily didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, "Because I think something's coming. And you deserve to know what you're part of." He turned. "Part of? You said it wasn't my story anymore." I was wrong, she said. It always was. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I drew this the night after the scan. It came to me in a dream. Look. She unfolded it and placed it on the table. It was a symbol, a strange one. A circle with intersecting lines, like a compass meeting a maze. It looked ancient, like something you'd see etched in a cave or hidden in some lost language. Thomas stared at it. He didn't know why, but something about it made his skin prickle. I've seen this before, he said suddenly. Emily's eyes snapped to his. Where? He swallowed. Years ago. A book. My grandfather used to talk about symbols like this. He was obsessed with old myths and forgotten civilizations. He called them keys to the unseen. She leaned forward. Do you still have the book? I don't know, he said, thinking. It might be in storage. Or, wait, there was a box. In the attic. I kept some of his things. He looked up at her. If that symbol is real, maybe we can find out where it came from. Emily nodded. I've been trying to research it, but nothing in modern databases matches. It's like it doesn't exist, or was erased. They both stood in silence for a moment, the weight of possibility sinking in. Finally, Thomas said, let's go. To the attic. Now. Emily hesitated. Are you sure? I came here looking for closure, he said. But this feels bigger than us. And I need to know what's happening. They left the house and got into the car, the tension between them slowly shifting, from one of blame and pain, to one of partnership again. The drive back was quiet. The rain had stopped, but the clouds hung low, heavy with something unsaid. Back at Thomas's old place, the attic was just as dusty and cramped as he remembered. Boxes piled high. Memories sealed in cardboard and cobwebs. After nearly an hour of digging, they found it, a worn-out box labeled, Grandpa, History Stuff. Thomas opened it, coughing as dust flew up. Inside were old books, leather-bound journals, and faded newspaper clippings. And near the bottom, he found it, a black notebook, the corners curled, the pages brittle. He flipped it open. And there it was. The same symbol. Drawn in ink. Annotated with scribbles and notes. Beneath the drawing, in shaky handwriting, was one word, Watcher. Emily whispered the word. Watcher? Thomas scanned the notes. He wrote that the symbol was seen in multiple places, caves in Turkey, markings in Peru, even crop formations in England. He believed it was tied to an ancient intelligence, something that only revealed itself during moments of great human crisis or transformation. Emily touched her stomach. Thomas looked at her. What if this baby, your pregnancy, is part of something, chosen? Before she could respond, a loud knock echoed from downstairs. They both froze. Another knock, harder this time. Thomas looked at the attic door. Did you tell anyone you were coming here? No, Emily said, her voice shaky. He stood. The knocking turned into pounding. Stay here, he said. He crept down the stairs. Through the frosted glass of the front door, he saw the shape of a man, tall, in a black coat, unmoving. Something about him felt wrong. Not dangerous. But, off. Thomas opened the door a crack. Can I help you? He asked. The man didn't answer at first. His face was pale. Expressionless. Finally, he spoke, voice calm but cold. You've seen the symbol. Thomas's heart dropped. The man reached into his coat, and handed him an envelope. You've been noticed, he said. Then he turned and walked away, vanishing into the mist. Thomas closed the door with shaking hands. He opened the envelope. Inside was a single sentence written in typewriter font. Some truths are not meant to be discovered. And underneath, the same symbol. The envelope trembled in Thomas's hands. Some truths are not meant to be discovered. The words echoed in his head as he stared at the crisp, white paper, the symbol underneath as sharp and mysterious as ever. He hadn't noticed before, but under certain light, the ink shimmered faintly, almost metallic. Not normal. Upstairs, Emily called out, "Thomas? What is it?" He didn't answer right away. He was still frozen at the door, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The man hadn't knocked like a stranger. He hadn't asked questions. He knew. And he'd vanished into the morning fog like a shadow. Thomas climbed the stairs, the envelope clutched tightly in his fingers. Emily sat cross-legged on the attic floor, the old notebook open in front of her. She looked up as he entered, instantly noticing his expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Maybe I have," he muttered, handing her the envelope. She read the message. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the paper. "Who gave this to you?" "A man. Tall. Pale. Dressed in black." He said. Thomas swallowed. He said, "You've seen the symbol." Then handed me that and walked away. Emily stared at him, her face pale. "Thomas, someone's watching us." He nodded slowly. "And they don't want us digging deeper." They sat in silence for a while, the air between them charged with something unspoken. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was realization. This wasn't just about a mysterious pregnancy. This was about something bigger. Older. Hidden. Emily flipped through the pages of the notebook again. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a journal entry dated July 12, 1972. "Saw the symbol again. In the cave outside Kimokli. Locals called it Goslamsiler, the Watchers. They say they appear when a soul is chosen. Not born, not summoned. Chosen. One in every generation." Thomas leaned over her shoulder, reading aloud, "They do not kill. They do not speak. But they leave signs. And if you follow them, you lose your life, or your mind." Emily looked up at him, her voice low. "I think they think this baby is one of the chosen." He stared at her stomach. "But chosen for what?" She shook her head. "I don't know." That night, Thomas couldn't sleep. He lay on the couch downstairs, watching shadows crawl across the ceiling. Every creak, every whisper of wind against the window, made him sit up. The symbol wouldn't leave his mind. Nor would the envelope. Or the man's voice. "You've been noticed." At around 3 a.m., his phone buzzed. A number with no name. No area code. His gut screamed not to answer. But he did. "Hello?" Silence. Then, a voice, whispering, mechanical, as if coming through layers of static. "Stop looking. Or they will come through." Click. He sat upright, heart pounding. He rushed upstairs. Emily was still awake, sitting in bed with her laptop open, scrolling through old research forums and obscure archaeological records. "You're not going to believe this," Thomas said. "Try me," she replied, not even looking up. He told her about the call. The voice. The warning. Emily closed the laptop. "We need help. Someone who knows about this." Thomas thought for a moment. "There's a name in the notebook. Someone your grandfather mentioned, Dr. Alex Soren. Remember?" She flipped back through the book, nodding. "Right here. He wrote, 'Ask Soren if they're real.' He saw the cave. He saw the Watchers." Thomas grabbed his laptop and started searching. "Here," he said after a few minutes. "There's a retired professor with that name. Lives upstate. used to teach ancient symbology and comparative mythology. You think he's the same one? Only one way to find out. They left the next morning. The drive took 3 hours, winding through back roads and thick woods. The GPS lost signal halfway, forcing them to navigate using printed directions and guesswork. Dr. Alex Soren lived alone in a small, weather-beaten cabin deep in the forest. When they knocked, there was no answer. They knocked again. Finally, the door creaked open. An old man, thin and hollow-eyed, stared at them. "I don't talk to journalists," he said, starting to close the door. "We're not journalists," Thomas said quickly. "Please, we're here about the Watchers." The door stopped. Dr. Soren's expression changed. His eyes narrowed. "You've seen the symbol?" Thomas nodded. "My grandfather wrote about you. He said you saw the cave." Soren opened the door fully. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. Inside, the cabin was dark and cluttered, walls lined with books, artifacts, and strange, ancient-looking tools. Dust danced in the shafts of light that broke through the blinds. They sat in worn leather chairs while Soren poured tea in silence. Then he spoke. "I saw them in 1968, he began. "In Turkey. A cave system that doesn't appear on modern maps. Locals feared it. Said strange lights came from inside. Sounds. Voices. I was young, curious. I didn't listen." He sipped his tea. "I went in with a team of 4. Only 2 of us came back. And the other man," he paused, "he never spoke again. Just drew that symbol. Over and over." Thomas and Emily exchanged a glance. "The Watchers are real," Soren said. "But they're not aliens. Not spirits. They're something in between. Beings from the thin places, the cracks in the fabric. They watch certain souls. Protect some. Destroy others. No one understands why." Emily's hand drifted to her belly. Soren's eyes followed the motion. "You're carrying one." She nodded. He sighed, looking away. "Then I'm sorry. You won't have peace again." "What does the symbol mean?" Thomas asked. The notebook called it a key. Soren got up and pulled an old scroll from a cabinet. He unrolled it on the table. The same symbol. But this one had more. Additional lines. Circles. A map? "It's not just a key," he said. "It's a location. A convergence point. A place where their presence is strongest. Where the veil is thin." He pointed to a place marked on the scroll. "A spot deep in the Appalachian Mountains." "I never went," he said. "I was too afraid. But if you want answers, that's where they'll be." Emily shook her head. "It's dangerous." "It's truth," Soren replied. "And truth always demands a price." He handed them a copy of the map. "Be careful. If they don't want you there, they will stop you." As they left, he added, "Don't go alone. And don't go at night." The car ride home was quiet. The woods felt heavier now, the trees watching. Back at Thomas's place, they spread the scroll out and began planning. "We'll need gear," he said. "Tents, food, flashlights, satellite phone." "I'll go," Emily said. He looked at her. "Are you sure? In your condition?" "I'm not fragile, Thomas. And this baby, whatever's growing inside me, it needs answers." He didn't argue. The next morning, they packed. They'd leave by noon. But as Thomas stepped outside to load the car, he saw something in the distance. Across the street. A figure. Still. Watching. It was the man in black. Again. This time, he raised a hand, and pointed at Emily's stomach. Then turned and walked into the woods. Vanished. Thomas ran after him, but the forest swallowed him whole. The forest was still. Too still. Thomas stood at the edge of the trees, breath fogging in the early morning air. The man in black had vanished again, just like before, no footsteps, no trail. Just gone, as if swallowed by the woods. Back at the cabin, Emily stood by the open door, calling out, "Thomas, come back." He hesitated for one more second, staring into the dense, whispering trees, then turned and jogged back to her. They couldn't afford to be separated. Not now. Was it him again? Emily asked as he climbed into the car. Thomas nodded, eyes darting toward the tree line. He pointed at you. At your stomach. Then walked away. Emily's hand instinctively touched her belly. He's not trying to hurt us, yet. Yeah, Thomas muttered. But what happens when we get closer to that place? They didn't know what to expect as they drove toward the Appalachians. The map from Dr. Soren was old, the roads barely marked. GPS was useless again. It was like the mountain didn't want to be found. Hours passed. Trees grew denser. The sun dipped lower. The air became heavier. Finally, they reached a rusted old trailhead. This is it, Emily said quietly, comparing the terrain to the hand-drawn map. We hike the rest. They packed their gear, tent, flashlights, canned food, flares, notebooks, and began the climb. As they walked, something felt off. The deeper they hiked, the quieter the forest became. No birds. No insects. Just their footsteps and breathing. After an hour, Emily stopped. Do you hear that? Thomas paused. No. What? Exactly. Her voice trembled. Nothing. It's too quiet. He looked around uneasily. The trail ahead sloped into a steep ravine. This way, he said, pointing to the mark on the map. We're close. They hiked for 2 more hours, until the forest suddenly gave way to a rocky outcropping. At its base, hidden beneath a curtain of vines and moss, was a jagged hole in the ground. A cave. Exactly as described in the notebook. Emily's eyes widened. We found it. The entrance pulsed with a faint warmth. The stone around it was marked with the symbol. It wasn't drawn. It was etched, ancient and weathered. Thomas felt his chest tighten. You ready? Emily nodded. Let's go. They stepped into the darkness. The air grew colder instantly, thick with moisture and a strange scent, earthy, metallic, like wet iron. Their flashlights barely pierced the gloom. The walls were covered in carvings, spirals and shapes resembling stars, eyes, even DNA strands. They moved slowly, carefully, deeper into the winding tunnel. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Suddenly, Emily stopped. Thomas, look. He turned, and saw it. A wall. Covered entirely in the symbol. But it wasn't just etched, it glowed. Faint, blue light pulsed beneath the surface like veins. Thomas touched it. The wall trembled under his palm. Then, clicked. A section of the stone slid aside. A hidden passage opened. Cold air rushed out, and their flashlights flickered. Thomas looked at Emily. Do we go in? We didn't come all this way to stop now. They entered the hidden chamber. It was vast, much larger than expected. The ceiling rose high above, lost in shadows. In the center stood a monolithic structure, stone and metal intertwined, pulsing with that same blue light. And at the base, a cradle. Empty. But ancient. It's like, it was made for something, Emily whispered. A child, Thomas said. One of the chosen. The moment he said it, the air shifted. A deep, resonant hum echoed through the cave. The lights in the walls flared. Then, from the darkness, something moved. A figure. Thin. Tall. Unnaturally so. No face. No eyes. Just the faint shimmer of energy where features should be. One of the watchers. It didn't speak. It didn't attack. It simply stared. Emily backed into Thomas. He held her close, his heart pounding. The watcher lifted a long, skeletal hand, and pointed at Emily's stomach. Then it turned, walking toward the cradle. It placed its hand over the stone, and the cradle lit up. Symbols appeared in the air above it. Floating. And then, images. A child. Glowing. Not fully human. Emily gasped. That's our baby. The vision shifted. The child, now older. Standing in a crowd. People reaching out to touch her. Then, chaos. Fire. The watchers surrounding her. Protecting her? Or imprisoning her? The vision vanished. The watcher turned back to them. Then, slowly, it extended its arm and dropped something onto the floor. A pendant. A disc with the symbol, suspended on a chain. Then the watcher stepped into the shadows, and disappeared. Silence returned. Thomas stepped forward and picked up the pendant. It pulsed with warmth. "What just happened?" he whispered. Emily stared at the cradle. "They were showing us the future." "Or a warning," he said. "Maybe both." They sat in silence, trying to process it all. Then Emily stood. "We need to get out of here. Now." As they turned to leave, a sound echoed behind them. A low growl. Not from a watcher. Something else. Something angry. The flashlight beam caught movement. Eyes. Red. Multiple sets. Crawling along the walls. Creatures. Not like the watcher, these were grotesque, twisted, flesh and bone warped together like they were never meant to exist. And they were coming. "Run!" Thomas shouted. They bolted down the passage, the creatures shrieking behind them. Claws scraped stone. The air was thick with heat and rot. The ground shook. The cave groaned. They reached the tunnel just as a massive stone collapsed behind them, sealing the chamber. Breathing hard, they staggered outside into the forest night. It was pitch dark. Stars above. But no moon. Only the pendant glowed faintly. They didn't stop to rest. Just kept moving. 4 hours. Until the forest thinned and the first light of dawn touched the sky. Finally, they reached their car. Safe. For now. Inside, Thomas collapsed in the driver's seat. Emily leaned back, clutching the pendant. Those things, they weren't watchers. No, Thomas agreed. They were protecting the cradle. Guard dogs. Or worse. Emily looked at the pendant. Why would the watcher give this to us? Thomas started the engine. Maybe we're not just being watched anymore. Maybe we're being chosen. As they drove, Emily dozed off, her hand still over her belly. And somewhere, far behind them, in the mountains, the cave entrance slowly sealed itself with stone. As if it had never existed at all. They didn't speak much on the way back. The car hummed quietly along the highway, but the silence inside was louder than any engine. Emily sat curled in the passenger seat, one hand resting on her belly, the other clutching the pendant the watcher had given her. It pulsed with a slow, faint glow, like a heartbeat. Thomas kept his eyes on the road, though his mind raced. He couldn't forget the creature in the cave. The glowing cradle. The watcher's vision of a child surrounded by chaos. He didn't want to believe it. But deep inside, he knew. This wasn't an ordinary pregnancy. They reached home just after 3 a.m. The cabin was still, quiet. But something felt wrong. Emily paused before stepping inside. "Do you feel that?" Thomas nodded. "Someone's been here." He unlocked the door and pushed it open slowly. Nothing looked disturbed. But he could tell, someone had entered. The scent was different. The air heavier. As if someone had been breathing in there just moments ago. Emily set her bag down and headed straight to the bathroom. "I need a shower. I feel like the cave's still on me." Thomas nodded and started checking the house, room by room. Living room. Clear. Kitchen. Clear. He reached the bedroom, and froze. The attic door was open. And on the floor below it, scratches. Not just any scratches. The symbol. Scraped into the wood, crudely, almost like it had been done with nails or bone. Thomas called out, "Emily, don't come up here." But it was too late. She was standing behind him. Her face pale. Her eyes wide. And in her other hand, blood. Not hers. The shower hadn't been hot enough, she said. So she'd used the kitchen sink. And when she turned on the tap, the water came out red. Thomas ran to the sink and checked it himself. Now it ran clear. But he could see it. A faint red stain still clinging to the edges of the drain. He touched the pipe underneath. It was warm. Unnaturally warm. "They're warning us," Emily whispered. "Or, no. They're telling us to prepare." That night, Thomas stayed up watching her sleep. Around 2 a.m., she began to sweat. Moaning. Her hands clutched her stomach. He rushed to her side. "Emily, what's wrong?" Her eyes opened, but they were glowing. A faint, bluish hue like the Watcher's energy. She gasped and suddenly arched her back, screaming. Then it stopped. She collapsed, unconscious. Thomas called 911. The ambulance arrived within minutes. He didn't mention the cave. Or the symbols. Just said his wife was pregnant and in pain. At the hospital, doctors ran tests. And then they stared at the results like they didn't make sense. "Sir," one said gently, pulling Thomas aside. "There's something unusual." "What is it?" The doctor hesitated. "Your wife she's showing symptoms of someone in their third trimester. But her record shows she's barely entering her second. That's medically impossible." Thomas stared at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean the fetus has grown weeks ahead of schedule, in just days. Her vitals are normal, but the growth rate isn't just fast, it's unnatural." They ran more scans. And then things got worse. The fetus had a heartbeat, 2, actually. One normal. The other, irregular. Faster. Non-human. The doctor looked shaken. "We're consulting specialists, but we need to keep her for observation. And sir, I need to ask, has she been exposed to anything unusual? Chemicals? Radiation?" Thomas hesitated. He wanted to say no. But before he could answer, another man entered the room. He was dressed in black. Neatly trimmed beard. Government badge. "Mr. Harris?" the man asked. Thomas turned. "Yeah. I'm Agent Colburn. DHS. I'd like to speak with you in private." They stepped outside into the hallway. "I understand your wife had an unusual event," Colburn said. "Happened during a recent trip." Thomas kept his voice steady. "We went hiking." "In Appalachia?" Thomas nodded. Agent Colburn leaned in slightly. "Did you happen to come across any caves?" Symbols? Thomas's blood froze. How do you know about that? Colburn pulled out a photo. A satellite image. And there, marked in red, the exact coordinates of the cave. We've been monitoring that area for years, Colburn said. Unmapped. Interference with electronics. Unexplained sightings. Locals speak of the Watchers. You familiar with that term? Thomas said nothing. Colburn tucked the photo away. Let me be clear, Mr. Harris. Whatever you saw, whoever you think you saw, it's classified. You and your wife are not safe. That child is not just a medical anomaly. It's a national concern. You want to take her, Thomas said. Colburn's eyes were unreadable. We want to protect her. And the child. Thomas shook his head. No. Not happening. Colburn's voice grew cold. That's not a request. Thomas turned and walked back into the hospital room. Emily was sitting up, pale but alert. He told her everything. Her face hardened. If they take me, I won't come back. I know, Thomas whispered. That's why we're leaving. Tonight. They checked out of the hospital against medical advice. Agent Colburn was waiting by the exit. Thomas stared him down. Try to stop us. Emily walked past him without a word. They got into the car and drove, nowhere specific. Just away. Away from people. From hospitals. From questions. That night, they stayed in a cheap roadside motel. Emily couldn't sleep. Neither could Thomas. Her stomach had started to glow faintly beneath the skin. Like something inside her was, alive in a way no human fetus had ever been. She sat on the edge of the bed, whispering to herself. I feel it moving. Not like kicking. Like, communicating. Thomas crouched in front of her. What does it say? Emily's eyes glistened. It's afraid. He took her hands. Then we protect it. No matter what. Suddenly, the pendant flared. Bright. Blinding. And then, projection. Right in the center of the motel room. A field. A tree. A child standing beneath it. Her hair white. Eyes glowing. And behind her, the Watchers. 5 of them. But this time, they weren't watching. They were bowing. Then the vision vanished. Emily gasped. I think that's our daughter. Thomas nodded slowly. They're not here to stop her. They're waiting for her. Emily stood. We need answers. Real ones. From who? She looked at the map again. There was a second location. The one your grandfather never visited. Thomas blinked. The circle on the other side of the page. Yes. And it's closer than we thought. They packed and drove again. A hidden place outside of New Mexico. Deep desert. Off the grid. They arrived after dark. And in the distance, an ancient, flat plateau. Covered in symbols. And standing in the center. Another Watcher. This one different. Taller. Wearing a robe that shimmered like liquid glass. It turned as they approached. Then did something none of the others had done. It spoke. Its voice echoed in their minds, not their ears. The vessel is nearly complete. Thomas stepped in front of Emily. What does that mean? You carry the convergence seed. The bridge between what was, and what will be. Emily's hands trembled. What happens if I give birth? The Watcher paused. Then answered. She will be the first. And the last. Thomas frowned. Last what? The last hope. Before they could ask more, the sky above shimmered. A helicopter. Spotlights. Government agents rappelling down. Thomas turned to Emily. Run. But she didn't move. She was clutching her stomach. It's time, she whispered. It's starting. The Watcher stepped forward, raised its hand. And the desert cracked open beneath them. Swallowed them whole. Darkness. Heat. And silence. The earth trembled beneath them. Emily could feel it, deep within her, as if the child inside her was reacting to the vibrations of the desert. The ground cracked open, revealing an abyss. The Watcher, the towering figure of shimmering glass-like fabric, stepped forward. But this time, there was no sense of danger. Instead, there was an odd calm. A sense of inevitability. Emily, stay close, Thomas whispered, his voice filled with urgency. His heart was pounding in his chest. His protective instinct kicked in, but in this strange place, with the earth cracking wide and the agents from the helicopter closing in above them, he felt like he was being dragged into a destiny that was no longer his to control. She didn't move. Emily was transfixed, her eyes locked on the Watcher. Her hand rested gently on her stomach, feeling the strange pull, the growing power. Her pregnancy was far beyond what any medical professional could understand. It was unnatural, yes, but it felt right in a way she couldn't explain. And the child, it was almost as if the child was calling to her. I feel it, she whispered, her voice distant. It's calling me. It wants to be born. Thomas didn't know what to say. He looked around, trying to make sense of the surreal scene before him. The desert was silent, too quiet, as though the very air was holding its breath. Suddenly, the agents above them began shouting, signaling their descent. Their figures flashed in the spotlight from the helicopter above. The rumble of the blades was deafening, but Emily's gaze never wavered from the Watcher. She knew this moment was critical. It was no longer about escaping, it was about embracing the truth. The Watcher raised a hand, and the agents froze mid-descent. The glow from the Watcher intensified, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch across the cracked desert floor. Emily's pulse quickened. Do you understand? The Watcher's voice spoke, not through the air, but directly in their minds. I think I do, Emily said softly. She could feel the weight of the question. The Watcher wasn't speaking to Thomas, it was speaking to her. The time has come, the Watcher continued. The convergent seed is awakening. This world is fractured, its balance is unstable. The child you carry is not merely of human origin. She is the bridge between two worlds. Thomas stepped forward, his heart hammering. What do you mean? She's my daughter. Emily's daughter. She's human. The Watcher's gaze, though lacking features, seemed to pierce him. Human, the Watcher repeated. Your kind is fragmented, split into timelines. The child you speak of is more than flesh. She is the harbinger. A being capable of mending the rift. If she survives. Survive? Emily's voice trembled. What do you mean, survive? The Watcher was silent for a moment. Then it spoke again. The child's birth will trigger the convergence, but the force that it unleashes is not predictable. There are those who seek to control her, those who wish to destroy her before she can fulfill her purpose. The darkness that watches, those who manipulate the human realm, will stop at nothing to prevent her from being born. Thomas felt a chill run through him. His eyes darted to the agents still hovering above. The flashing spotlights grew brighter. Is that why they're here? He asked, his voice raw. To kill her? The Watcher nodded slowly. Yes. The agents were close now. They would land in mere seconds. Time was running out. Emily took a deep breath. And if I give birth? What happens then? The rift will heal, the Watcher said. And a new beginning will emerge, but so will new dangers. The future is uncertain, but the child will change everything. She looked down at her stomach, her hands trembling. I'm ready, Emily whispered, her voice steady now. I'll give birth. I'll do whatever it takes. Before Thomas could protest, before he could even process what she had just said, the ground beneath them shifted again. The earth split open further. A fissure, wide and deep, stretched out before them. Out of it, a pulse of light erupted, shooting upward, lighting the desert sky. The agents scrambled, confused by the sudden surge of power. Emily's hand went to her stomach again. The glow intensified. The desert around them seemed to breathe, the sands shifting as though the very land itself was awakening. I don't know if we can outrun this, Thomas said, his voice strained. They're going to kill you, Emily. They'll stop at nothing. Emily turned to him, her face calm but filled with determination. Then they'll have to kill us both. The Watcher stepped closer, its presence overwhelming. Emily's body tensed, and suddenly, she collapsed to her knees. Emily! Thomas shouted, rushing to her side. Her breathing quickened, shallow. The glow from her stomach was now blinding. The child inside her was ready to emerge. The birth was imminent. I'm scared, Emily gasped, her face contorting with pain. Thomas crouched beside her, holding her hand. We're in this together. I'm here. I won't let them take you. You're not alone. The Watcher raised a hand, and the desert around them seemed to bend, the world falling silent. The only sound now was the wind and Emily's labored breathing. And then it began. Emily cried out, the pain unmistakable. Her body arched, and Thomas gripped her hand tighter. He could feel the change happening, the energy pulsing from her, from the earth, from everything. The rift in the land widened, the forces of nature themselves seeming to bend and crack under the weight of what was happening. A cry pierced the air. Not a human cry, a different sound, ancient, otherworldly. Thomas felt his heart race. The agents were closing in. He could hear their footsteps, the tension in the air. They would be upon them in seconds. But in this moment, nothing else mattered. Not the government, not the agents, not the world beyond this place. Just Emily. Just the child. With one final scream, Emily gave birth. The desert trembled. The ground shifted again, the rift growing larger, swallowing the agent's helicopter whole as it crashed into the fissure. The agents fell silent, their presence erased. And in Emily's arms, the child emerged. A girl. Not human. Not fully. Her skin was pale, almost glowing, her eyes wide and unblinking, an unnatural light shining within them. Her hair was silver, shimmering in the light of the desert. She opened her eyes, looking directly at Thomas and Emily. And then she smiled. It wasn't just any smile, it was knowing, ancient, as if she understood the weight of the world that was about to change. The Watcher bowed its head. The convergence is complete, it said. This is the child who will heal what was torn. She will be the bridge between the timelines. Emily, holding her child close, whispered, but what happens to us? What happens to me? The Watcher stepped forward, its voice a soft echo in their minds. You are the beginning. The child will carry the burden. She will guide the others. Thomas watched as the child reached out with small hands, her fingers brushing against Emily's skin. And in that instant, he understood. The future, the balance of worlds, it was no longer in his control. It wasn't even in Emily's. It was in the child's hands. Emily looked at Thomas with tears in her eyes, but there was peace in her gaze. We've done it. We've given her the chance. A low rumble echoed from the earth beneath them, and the rift in the desert began to heal. The land began to settle, the glowing light from the child fading as she nestled into Emily's arms. But the truth was clear. They couldn't stay here, not anymore. The world outside would never be the same. "Let's go," Thomas whispered. Emily nodded, holding the child tightly, her heart full of both fear and hope. The watcher watched them leave. The desert was calm now, as though nothing had happened. No sign remained of the chaos, the agents, or the rift. Just the land. And the future.